Far too many lawyers are building law firms that they absolutely hate. And no lawyer should ever find themselves in that situation. So today, I'm going to talk about four really key things that I've noticed that leads lawyers to building a law firm that they absolutely hate. And then I'm going to give you a few tips on how you can avoid that for you. Now, before I begin that, let me be very clear. When I say lawyers are building law firms that they hate, that is no exaggeration. It is coming exactly from things that I have heard lawyers say. Like I have said in conference calls, I've said in meeting rooms, I've gone to dinner with lawyers, and I've said it at conferences in different places. And one of the things that I notice is there are a lot of lawyers in those moments where they confide and they say things like, you know what? I really wish I would have built a different business. If I can go back and do it again, I would probably build something else. Or, you know what? I'm thinking about just shutting my firm down and investing in some other business. Or, you know what? I felt much better about my business before we started growing it. Like, I wish we didn't have all these headaches. Or, I feel like I'm just constantly working to put money in other people's bank account and I'm not really seeing what's in it for me. And when I hear stories like that, I'm like, man, it really shouldn't be that way when building a law firm. To be honest, like I'm not a lawyer, but one of the things that I look at when building a law firm or law firms we've analyzed is that law firms are pretty good businesses to have if they have the right financial systems in place. So let's talk about a few of the reasons why lawyers find themselves in this predicament. The four main reasons that we consistently see as to what leads a lawyer to feel like they really hate their firm or they wish they had done something different is that the first thing is they're really hard on themselves and they're beating themselves up about where their firm is. The second one is they lack clear objectives and targets. The third one is they don't really have the right KPIs or understand how the numbers work in their business. And then the fourth one is they're hiring the wrong people to help them navigate it. When those four things are present, we typically see that the lawyer is not very happy with the firm that they built, or it seems like it's just more hassle than benefit when they have that situation. So let's talk through each of those four, and I want to break it down and give you some tips on what you can do to make sure that that is not your situation. Now, for the first one, when lawyers are being very hard on themselves, one of the things that I try to take a step back and really understand, like, why are they feeling the way they're feeling about their firm? For example, I was talking to a lawyer once and we were going through their firm and they just telling me all this stuff about how they felt like the firm was frustrating. They felt like, maybe should I shut it down and do something different? And I said, okay, all right, let's just kind of walk through what's going on in your firm. And so we started going through the numbers. And after going through the numbers, one of the things that I realized is like their firm did about 1.7 million in revenue. And when I looked at, okay, all right, out of their salary and all the benefits that the owner was getting out of the business, I'm like, you know what? If we add all of this up, this owner was taking about 33% of, the revenue as benefits that they were getting. And I said, you know what? Based on this, I'm kind of struggling to understand, like, why do you feel like this is so bad? And they were like, well, you know what? I should be at 2 million and I want to be making more money. And I asked, like, well, how much money do you think you're making? And they threw out a number. And I said, well, based on what the numbers are telling me, like, you're making about $561,000 a year from your firm. Based on these numbers, like I'm still a little confused. Like, how much did you think you would be making? Because you're making about 33%. And then they said, well, I've heard of other lawyers who are making about 35%. And there is where I started to realize, like, okay, all right, here is probably where problem number one is instead of really just focusing on what matters to you, you're busy comparing yourself to other law firms. And what ends up happening is when we start to compare ourselves to other law firms, what we don't realize is we have no idea what is going on behind the scenes in that firm. We have no idea, like, all of the things that are happening that we can't see. So, what we should be doing instead of comparing ourselves to someone who may be doing a little bit more or maybe running their firm a little bit different than ours, what we should do is let's start with your goals. Instead of looking at them, let's start with what is the lifestyle you want to live? And then let's figure out what does your business need to look like to support the lifestyle that you want. For example, let's say if we did the math and the lifestyle that you want, the math came out and said, hey, you need about $115,000 a year. Well, if you made 150, you're probably doing pretty well because you're making enough to support the lifestyle that you want. But on the other hand, let's say if you were still making that 150 and we did the math and we figured out that you need about $200,000 to live the lifestyle you want. Well, in that case, you're making the same amount of money, but based on your specific goal, we can determine whether you're doing well or not doing well. So, one of the first things that I tell every lawyer is let's stop looking at what other people are doing, or let's not chase what other people are doing or how other people say that they're doing. And let's focus on what is the lifestyle you want to live. And then let's do the math to figure out what does your business need to look like to achieve that lifestyle. Now, the second thing we come to is having clear objectives and targets. What happens for a lot of firms is that they set these big goals of, hey, we want to be a $5 million firm. We want to be an $8 million firm, or we want to be $1 million firm. Whatever that number is, what I do know is that no one can really manage achieving a big goal in just one fell swoop. What we need to do is we need to take that really big goal and we need to break it into smaller pieces that you can actually manage and monitor on a regular basis. For example, I'm going to use some high level numbers just to make it a lot simpler for the math that I'm going to do in my head. So let's say if we did the math, we figured out the lifestyle you want to live requires $300,000 a year for you to live that lifestyle. And let's say if your business typically generates about 30% in profit margin. Well, what that tells me is your business needs to generate about $1 million a year in revenue for you to be able to get $300,000 out to support the lifestyle that you want. Now that we know that, hey, your goal is $1 million for you to be able to live the lifestyle you want, the next thing we want to figure out is, okay, let's break that down on a monthly basis because you really can't manage $1 million a year as a goal. Let's break it down to say, what does your business need to do on a monthly basis? So let's take that million divided by 12. And what we can figure out is that, hey, you need to do about $83,000 a month, 83 to 84,000 a month to be able to achieve that $1 million a year. Well, if we break it down that way, it starts to become a whole lot more manageable because, see, the thing is, you can probably manage, hey, how much revenue did we achieve this month? How much revenue are we going to achieve next month? You can manage it on a month-to-month basis as opposed to if you're just focused on, well, we need to do $1 million in a year. Well, how are you going to manage that on a regular basis? And to take it even further, if we say like you need to do $83,000 a month. Well, now we want to go a step further and we want to figure out, okay, what does that mean for you on a weekly basis? And we can start to get into things like if you're billing hourly as your billing model, we can take that 83,000 and let's say if your average billable hour when you look at your entire legal team is somewhere like $350 an hour. What that comes down to is about 238 billable hours in a month. Well, if you have 3 people, what that means is between those 3 people, all 3 of those people need to do about 238 billable hours a month. That's roughly what, 80 billable hours a person or 20 billable hours a week. So when you start to break down this one big goal, you wanted to live a lifestyle of $300,000 a year. We figured out, well, what does the business need to do? What do you need to do on a monthly basis? And now we've gotten down to the point where we know what does each individual person on your legal team need to achieve on a week-to-week basis. Because At that point, you can manage what happens on a week to week basis. And if things are going in the right direction, then what you'll end up doing is you'll end up achieving your overall goal. See, a lot of times lawyers feel very overwhelmed trying to achieve their annual goal. And that's because it's tough trying to wrap your arms around what you're going to do for the entire year. But if you can break it down to a week to week level, you can manage what happens this week, you can manage what happened next week and the week after. And if you go piece and step by step, it allows you to have a much more cohesive strategy and it just becomes less overwhelming. Now, the third factor becomes how are you going to actually keep up with all of the objectives and all of these numbers and tracking? Like, do you really have to keep it all in your head? Well, this is where it really pays to have really good systems. So in this scenario, if you need to figure out like how much legal work are you actually getting achieved, like how much legal work is being done, well, that's usually what you're going to look in your case management or your practice management tool. And then we got to have a system for being able to actually bill your customers and collect payment. That's going to be between like your billing system and your payment processor. So the payment processor might be attached to your case management software, or it may be something separate like LawPay or something like that. But you need to have a way that people can actually pay you when you send them an invoice. Now, if you're doing contingency work, it's going to be a little bit different. But if you're doing contingency work, you're probably going to get one lump sum check. But in that case, you need to track like how much money is coming in, who that money belongs to, because if you're doing contingency work, not all the money belongs to you. And you want to make sure that you have some way of tracking that, which leads us to the next step is having an accounting system, because you need to be able to track how much money is coming in and how much money is going out. Now, I've seen a lot of lawyers trying to manage this through their bank account. But what I will say is it's possible to manage all this in your bank account. But one of the things that you'll notice is it's hard for you to know what happened this week versus what happened last week, or what happened this month versus last month. Because if you're trying to do it all in your bank account, you have to constantly be recalculating and manually pulling all the numbers together, which is why it helps to have a good accounting system. So between your case management software, your payment processor, and your accounting system, you can easily access all of the data that you need to be able to manage your law firm from a week to week basis. Now, the fourth and final thing that I would say is when law firms often hire someone to help them kind of navigate this, because it is a lot to manage all of the financial systems and doing all the reconciliations, figuring out like, hey, how much money went in, how much money went out, and creating the right reporting so you understand all this. It's when you want to hire someone to help you with it, you want to make sure that there are a few key things in place. First, if you hire a bookkeeper that can do all the reconciliation, get you the financial reports, make sure this bookkeeper actually understands how law firm accounting works. There have been far too many lawyers who have created a massive issue for themselves because they hired a bookkeeper who didn't understand how law firm accounting works. So now they're having to clean up a mess that a bookkeeper who doesn't understand their business created. So you want to make sure you hire someone who understands how law firm accounting works. Now, when you want to go a bit deeper and you want to get some of these advanced reporting and you want to understand the numbers or forecast better or build a actual financial strategy to make sure that you are headed in the right direction, you want to start looking at a fractional CFO or a full-time CFO that can really help you dig into those numbers and do some strategic planning and can really help you think through things like when is the right time to hire the next person? How much can we afford to pay for that salary? Or doing some cash flow planning like, hey, when can we pay off the credit card balance or pay off the loan? Or when do we need to get a loan? Like all of those types of things are things that a CFO can really help you with. So if you're a lawyer and you're building a law firm, I highly, highly advise you to pay attention to these four areas. Is to not compare yourself to other lawyers or other law firms because you have no idea what is happening behind the scenes in their business. The second thing is invest the time to set your own clear objectives and targets based on what you really want. Like, figure out what you want your lifestyle to look like, then figure out what does your business need to look like to support that lifestyle, and then let's break it down so you can manage what are the targets you need to achieve on a week to week basis so you can manage that. The third thing is make sure you have access to the right data and key performance indicators or KPIs. Because if you don't have access to the right data, you're not going to be able to manage all that is going on. It's going to feel overwhelming. And then the fourth thing is if you are going to hire someone, make sure they understand how law firms work and make sure they understand law firm accounting. Because if you hire the wrong person, you could just be multiplying your problems and creating an even bigger issue. I've seen many firms who have hired someone who didn't understand law firm accounting, and it really caused an issue. And unfortunately, there's some people who've been at risk of losing their license to practice law because of what happened there. So you want to make sure you have someone who understands your business and your industry. Now, I will tell you, if you're looking for a really good bookkeeper or a CFO that can help support your law firm, the T.O. Turner Group is a great option because we really know the industry. We work with bar associations. We work with different law firms across the country. We do training regularly to guide people through understanding the finance side of running a law firm. We've worked with over 100 different law firms, kind of navigating the financial systems and the strategies to building the type of business that can support the lifestyle that they want to have. And we're available to take on new clients. So if you need help with a good bookkeeper and CFO, then give us a call, or you can click on the link below in the comments and you can book a discovery call. And the way that'll work is we'll sit down, we'll have a conversation about what are your goals, what are you trying to achieve, and we'll give you our best recommendation to help you get started on the journey that you need to be on to achieve the lifestyle and the goal that you want for yourself. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Law Firm and Finance Show, where we give you great content that helps you build a more successful law firm. So make sure you hit that subscribe button on all platforms and follow us for more content.